Hello friends, it's me, Blake the Scholar of Magic. Today, we will be going over a commander named Illuna, Apex of Wishes. And if you follow my channel before, you know we got pretty deep into Omnath Locus of All, which is a good 5-color commander, and it fits very well for Mutate. The reasoning was because a lot of like the 5-cost Mutate cards all have 3-colored pips in their casting costs, which activates Omnath. And I did create a really nice Omnath deck, and I have a really nice draft of that for Brawl, and I'll definitely put that in the description so you can kind of see where it landed for that at least. But I went to thinking, I was like, you know what? I think we can get the job done, like with just like, for instance, in like a 3-color deck. And it would be really nice if we had a commander that can mutate for the command zone. And I was like, you know, Illuna played really well in that Omnath Locus of All deck. So I was like, well, let's give Illuna a chance. Let's take a look at it and see how it goes. So here's Illuna, Apex of Wishes, Landfall. And you can see we got Illuna here. And there's definitely like Timmy ways to go about this commander. So let's just get right into the commander so you kind of get an idea of what's going on here. So let's go ahead and click on Illuna here. Kind of just scoot this up a little bit. And you can kind of see it in the bigger font there. So Illuna Apex of Wishes is a 2, green, blue, and red. It's a legendary creature, beast elemental dinosaur. Mutate 3, red or green, blue, and blue. If you cast a spell for its mutate cost, put it over or under target non-human creature you own. They mutate into the creature on top plus all the abilities from under it. So I am very excited to show you this deck today. I also wanted to mention I have actually finished the full-on deck tech here. So I do have this as well, and we'll definitely be looking at the beautiful cards soon. But I know a lot of you kind of enjoyed kind of getting into like a deep dive of this, maybe looking at some Goldfishing, maybe seeing how I play certain hands out. So this is a mutate mechanic, and what that means is that you're going to have a creature already on the battlefield, and you will attempt to cast this card for its mutate cost. If you're familiar with Bestow, it's similar to that in that mechanic. And but basically what they do is basically, if it resolves onto the creature, they'll meld into one thing. So that's kind of what happens. And based on that mutate, there's triggers. Now for Illuna, the trigger, when this successfully mutates onto a creature, what happens is you get to exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. What's really big about that is that it's gonna ignore all your sorceries and instants and your lands, and in favor it's gonna find those creatures and those enchantments. Basically, those non-land permanents that will come to the battlefield and stick. So that's how that works, and it's just a nice 6/6 flyer, flying trample. It's just a beautiful card, and this card has spawned all sorts of different types of builds, and they're all very strong. There's basically builds that just want to find omniscience, for instance, like they're just filled with like sorceries and instants. And basically, when you get Illuna, you're just like, for instance, mutating over like a token. And when that resolves, you're just finding omniscience because you don't have any other permanents in your deck. You're just basically finding that. And I thought it would be like kind of an injustice not to include omniscience as a possible hit. So we still have that here. So that's kind of nice. So we can kind of just look at these beautiful creatures over here and kind of get an idea of like what my idea for Illuna is. And there's definitely some room for still mutate cards. Of course, we love, if we can have mutate on our commander, we're going to love to have it with amongst our other creatures as well. There's just benefits and just cards in general that work well with mutate. So we're not really going the full Timmy version, right, where we're just not playing any permanents other than like omniscience. When omniscience, basically, we'll go over that card, is basically you just get to cast spells from free from your hand, which is really crazy. But in this particular build, we basically took like the Almath Locus of All Shell, and we kind of just distributed over without the black and white cards. So we're getting some really nice, beautiful land cards. We'll just go over some of the highlights, I'd say, of what landfall means. And basically, landfall is just, for instance, if you have certain permanents on the battlefield, for instance, creatures. When a land comes onto the battlefield, which happens very frequently, you get a trigger, and that's how you derive value. So a card like Ashaya will not only see our lands coming in as lands, which they do of course de facto, but it also will see your creatures, your non-token creatures, also come in as lands. So I feel like Ashaya is probably one of those bridge cards, what I call like a bridge card, meaning that this card will kind of equalize you, and it can compete like with the toughest of the tough, just because it is a low casting cost creature that is basically scales by the amount of creatures and lands you control by power and toughness, so it can create a big body in general. And then secondly, if you're deriving benefits from putting lands on the battlefield, Ashaya itself will see itself as a land. It'll see other creatures coming on the battlefield as a land, and then also your other non-token creatures will be able to tap for green as if they were a land. So it's just like just a perfect storm for 5. It's just a great, and you can get it for $6 now, guys. What a deal! I mean, you should have one if you don't have one already. So we love Ashaya just as like basically just a landfall glue. And then of course you kind of want, with my opinion about kind of landfall and like cards like with Mutate, is that you're really going to want to shoot for those cards that have enter the battlefield triggers, because there's so many good cards here that love to see like additional mutates. And what's going to happen with that is that you can basically copy these spells like quite frequently and with ease. And so that's why we'd probably get away from like your Vorinclexes of the world that just have like passive effects or passive abilities, and we really shoot for like these cards that have enter the battlefield characteristics. Aftermath Analyst is perfect for this. Really nice enter the battlefield trigger. You can build your graveyard for more lands. Avenger of Zendikar is going to see all the lands you have and then create those plant tokens that can scale up with more lands come on the battlefield. Similarly, you have like Blossoming Tortoise, which also just has a really nice enter the battlefield trigger that just like derives more lands for you, just pops one back if it sees one in the graveyard. What else? Excuse me, I had a really big dinner tonight, obviously. Yeah, what else? Of course, Lumra is just another great enter the battlefield card. This will mill 4 cards upon entering the battlefield and then return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. I mean, there's no reason why this isn't a $10 card. I mean, it's probably worth more than that in my eyes. But so let's just imagine like kind of why this is, good stuff. So also cards like Ivy is just another kind of mutate enabler, and it will double like the mutates that you have. So if for instance we have like an Ivy, the Gleeful Spell Thief on the battlefield, and you have your Illuna and another creature on the battlefield, you can go ahead and mutate Illuna over under that first creature. Ivy will see that, and you can mutate Illuna over under Ivy, and basically get 2 Illuna triggers. Basically, you don't want to legend rule yourself by putting the Illuna over like the both of the creatures, because then they'll legend rule themselves, but you can sneak that by just putting one underneath, whatever you choose, however you want to go about that. And the great thing about that is, if you put Illuna under, for instance, an Ivy, basically Ivy still becomes like an Illuna, so each time you you mutate on something else, it's going to be another trigger of like basically Illuna once Ivy gets mutated on again. From that other mutate onto the other creatures. So it's like a really interesting kind of like stacksy kind of value orientated thing, where your value seems to kind of outweigh the the risk of just putting all your eggs into one basket, so to speak, for one creature, because that could happen, right? That's when the kind of things get sad, is like when your mutated Birds of Paradise also all of a sudden gets slashed down, and you're kind of like 2 for 1, and that's not a good feeling, is it? So we want to like definitely derive value from this stuff, and we definitely will do so. And the choices, like, I just have some other, like, this isn't like a specific enter the battlefield trigger for Morag, but it just is so good with lands, and it's getting those extra combats kind of acts like kind of like a Craterhoof Behemoth for us type effect. It's a good finisher. So Morag definitely has a good place for this. And I also value like low mutate cards as well, like for instance like a Parcel Beast or Lord Dracus. Those are just awesome for us guys, because we want to like keep our gasoline going, and we're going to have ways to like play off the top of our deck. And if we have like only really like high costed mutate cards, we could gas out. But if I have like, for instance, a Lord Dracus and a Parcel Beast in sequence with some good mutates that are already on the battlefield, I'm just like mutating for cheap. We're going to get more mutates in. So it's always like a good exchange. The landfall cards that you kind of see what I value is, I definitely value like the ability to play off the top of the deck. So Oracle of Moldiah will definitely let us play lands from the top of our deck. Similarly, Errata will definitely let us play off the top of our deck as well. And also, additionally, I love to play from the graveyard. So, like a Ramnap Excavator, you may play lands from your graveyard. It's just very effective, especially for me playing cards like Dryad and Asusa and Exploration, where it's just going to be like you can play Azusa, and like if you don't have like a Crucible of Worlds type effect, or like an Oracle of Moldiah, the card just kind of gasses itself out. Like you'll play, the one or one additional land or even 2 additional lands, but what after that? Like what are you going to do after that? You have to like either draw a bunch of cards, or you're going to have to like figure out a way to synergize with your other cards to like kind of keep that top of the deck flowing. And sometimes the top of the deck bricks, and you don't have ways to play from your lands and anymore. So that's when like a Ramnap Excavator kind of shores that up. And this thing just says, hey, you got lands in your graveyard, we can play them for as long as you want. So, I mean, that's great. I feel like it's just a very strong, I think the reason why I kind of keep coming back to this archetype is it seems very strong to me. And if you can put enough lands on the battlefield, you're doing pretty well. I also have some really nice choices in here, like a Royal Elemental. If you're a fan of old Zendikar, this one seems really cool. Like, I can imagine just hitting this off of Illuna and then like start taking control of like other people's like creatures. It's kind of fun, huh? So there's a Royal Elemental. You'll also see we have cards like Solemn Simulacrum, just like some really nice like enter the battlefield triggers that we definitely won't mind copying these with like a Vesuvian Duplimancy. That's kind of like one of the major fun things about this deck is when you have like a Vesuvian Duplimancy and you're starting to copy like your Blossoming Tortoise or your Solemn Simulacrum, and you're just getting like some crazy like enter the battlefield value. We also have a Slippery Boggle just to kind of like protect our Illuna, which would be really nice to mutate onto something like this where it's just basically it's hexproof. So that's just a nice choice for us. Just a really cool choice to get into. And of course, how can you go wrong with like a Tireless Provisioner? Think about this, guys. Like a Tireless Provisioner or a Nissa. These are very similar cards. The Nissa and Provisioner. And the reasoning why they're somewhat similar is that because they basically like get you ahead on mana like on a significant rate, more so than like a Mana Dork could ever do. Similarly, Lotus Cobra does something similar to this, right? Where, say for instance, I play Lotus Cobra on an early sequence, I go into a fetch land, for instance, and instead of that land only producing 1 mana on face value, it gets the entering, it gets the fetching. So we're at 2, and then it gets to land itself. So it's basically producing like 3 lands all of a sudden. Similarly, a Tireless Provisioner does some similar characteristic in the form of treasures, though. So you don't lose that mana. You just kind of net it. What's great about the Nissa is that you can actually, on that second occurrence of a land drop, you actually get to fetch an elemental. So we can fetch up like a Royal Elemental. It's random, so it could be like a Royal Elemental here for us. It could be a Lumra here. Could be an Avenger of Zendikar. So we have some really nice elemental. Could even be an Ashaya. Do we have like a lot of elves, like little elves? I mean, we have a Fintorn elf. So we also have this Oracle. So there's a couple elves that like, maybe like won't be the best hits. But we do have some good elves in general to hit. And those other ones are just nice in general for us in the early sequence. So we're not sad about it. What else we got going here? So we also have the Balaged Recovery, just to get into like our graveyard, which is really nice. Some really nice kind of tech lands here. There's some newer ones like Bridgeworks Battle, which is like some target removal. Stomp is similar to this, and we're gonna have a 6/6, so they're pretty good for us. And then we have these. I really am a very, very big fan of the 2 mana ramp cards that are green. For instance, the 3 visits, and that they come untapped. The card itself comes up in untapped. That's really nice. So we like that for both of these. So Nature's Lore and 3 visits are redundant ways of, on turn 2, basically just finding a land and putting it onto the battlefield untapped. It's a forest, so you can, find your, you can find your stomping ground. You can find your breeding pool. You can even find like your surveil lands. So it's really up to you, like how you want to go about that. So there's that. Then of course you have like your nice like channel lands here that are just big mana spells, or they can be lands. So we love those. And then we just kind of have a nice suite of interaction. Nothing too crazy, because we're kind of going to be going over top with Illuna. We just really want kind of Illuna to kind of get on top and let the RNG gods take over from there. But yeah, we have some nice ones. I really like this over like a Swan Song. I know the treasures are kind of sad to like give up to people, but it's just like I kind of get sad when my Swan Song or something doesn't like connect, and it's like, man, I should just be playing this. So I kind of like the idea of playing an offer you can't refuse, and just like target, for 1 blue, just countering any non-creature spell seems really good. Additionally, I really like kind of Beast Within, just for that nice kind of green removal that can just destroy any target permanent. It could be a land, could be an enchantment, a creature, just really nice. In exchange, you get a 3/3 at instant speed. I like that spell a lot. Jawari, of course, is just that sneaky land, and we're playing Landfall. So, yeah, we love Jawari as just kind of like that really sneaky one where someone taps out and we have this available, we'll just use it. Mana Drain, just for being like the most goated like spell like of all time, basically. And just, I can't believe this thing like produces any amount of colorless based on the spell's casting cost that you counter. It's just such a big shift, and it's really good for our high costed commander that, basically requires colorless mana to mutate too. I think that's why Soul Ring is probably so good in this deck as well, because you're just accelerating to that inevitability, which is just those colorless and two blue and a green or a red, to mutate for Illuna. So Saint Stupor is just another land that can also bounce, so it can bounce back to hands, permanents or spells. And then a Worldly Tutor. This is just a great one for Illuna, because Illuna basically will just take the first permanent that it sees, once it mutates. So if you have a Worldly Tutor, you can put any of the aforementioned creatures that are, mega bombs here. Put a Royal Elemental on top. You have a really nice toolbox. You could put a Lumra on top. Whatever you want to see hit the battlefield. Mirage. You have Avenger. It could even be a Shaya. Maybe you want to see a Starks hit the battlefield. Maybe like you have like a frontline heroism on the battlefield, and you want to kind of start mutating onto stuff that are really good to mutate on. So, yeah, That would be kind of an idea as well. So let's kind of go over the artifacts here. There's not many. I mean, we have most of the ramp through green, but there's some really sneaky ones. I mean, obviously this is fine, but Emerald Medallion, I was like, this is such an interesting sequence, because usually go like, you like the interaction of like a soul ring into a signet, right? But I was like, you know what? A soul ring into an Emerald Medallion is so much better for this deck, because you can see how much green we have. We're just like basically, predominantly, including our commander, we're just mostly green, just a lot of green spells. So I thought Emerald Medallion was kind of like very fitting for this deck, and I believe it's going to be great. So there's that, and then we get the Crucible of Worlds, of course, and that is the art we have for the deck to show off. And yeah, it's exciting. And now look at these beautiful enchantments. You're just going to love these guys. A little bit of acceleration. I like Utopia Sprawl just because you have that like mana readily available. Usually you can just tap like your bird down or another forest and then have like that mana that you enchant onto your forest, that additional mana just available. Excuse me. So we do love that stuff. Sorry. We also have the just really nice, landfall benefits. Like, of course, we want to play from the top of our deck. This one will actually let you play additional lands, which is also insane. The Case of Lock Hot House. To solve, you control 7 or more lands, and you do this at the end step. So if you have the 7 or more lands at your end step, you solve the case. And once it's solved, you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands and cast creature and enchantment spells from the top of your library. Nice. This one just kind of gets to the point, right? The frenzy. How could you not play this in your landfall decks? Let's play from the top. Like, who cares about our hand? Like, let me play all the lands that I can possibly play. Please let me just do this. And yeah, that's sometimes what you got to do. And you can cast spells from the top of your library too. If you are manipulating this well, it's kind of like a Bolas Citadel if you think, and you can use your fetch lands to kind of reset the top of your deck and kind of keep going. Exploration, of course, is just that awesome, additional land. From an early sequence, this is just, there's nothing that can compare to this. I went to the chocolate store today, and I was like, they ran out of the raspberry truffles there, and I was like, hey, is there anything like this, that you have? And the lady's like, no, there's not. There's no other chocolates like that. There's no other card like Exploration, is there? There's not. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, 1 green. That thing can get out of hand. Let's be honest. Let's just have 4 lands on the battlefield on turn 2. Okay, let's do this. And then let's go into an experimental frenzy, and then really get busy. Frontline Heroism. This card is a $10 card. It's for 50 cents now. You can get it for 50 cents, and you all need to go get it. I'm begging you. Go get this card. Think about this, guys. You do you want to have 2 Illuna triggers go off like on curve? Yes. Well, this is how you do it. You do it with a Frontline Heroism, and this thing also just creates a token already, and then I don't know, like we're gonna mutate onto the token, and then Frontline Heroism is gonna allow us to to copy that mutate spell, which is Illuna, and we can go ahead and put it underneath. So we have basically a Illuna 6/6 token and a Illuna 1/1 token that was just newly made, but we're gonna get those 2 triggers, and we're gonna get 2 permanents on the battlefield that are non-lands. So that's a kicker. It's not even going to see your land. So, the RNG gods could just, bless us with like an omniscience. And then all of a sudden we have an omniscience on the battlefield, and we can cast spells from our hand without paying their mana costs. Or it can get into like a 1 with a multiverse, which is just as good. What also is cool about 1 with multiverse is you can play lands from the top of your deck with this as well. So it's kind of an ultimate landfall deck. Ultimate landfall. This is the ultimate landfall. We're going to change the title because that's what it is, guys. We get cards with Sylvan Library. It's beautiful. And then Vesuvian Duplimancy. Vesuvian Duplimancy really likes the enter the battlefield triggers for your creatures. Like, so we mentioned like most of the elementals, like Avenger Zendikar really loves this kind of stuff. Blossoming Tortoise really likes these kind of things. And even having like an additional Morag on the battlefield seems good to like kind of stack those extra combats as well. So we're never going to hate like, copying like our legendary and mutating onto them. This card is really nasty with like an Ivy, because basically you're going to be you can create abundance of Ivies, and they won't be considered legendaries. So your mutates will just kind of start getting a little stronger, and it will be a little bit harder for you to kind of keep track of that, and that's when the game will kind of get a little messy. But I mean, you can imagine like just having one Ivy on the battlefield is pretty manageable, but when you have like an additional Ivy on the battlefield, you can kind of see where the triggers can kind of get a little bit silly, because you're just going to be like, kind of exponentially creating triggers. But you could do it. You're just going to be getting lots of triggers for your mutates. So just take it slow, and it'll make sense. So yeah, Vesuvian Duplimancy, we still just love that because we have enough mutates. You have to kind of make sure that you're going to be keeping the mutates in. Not all of these mutates are the best, but they are manageably priced, right? So a 4 mutate for a loot is I guess it's fine, right? Because it's just we're looking for that low mutate cost. And I mean, that's, the loot is pretty good on its own, right? So that kind of just slides by. This one is probably too expensive, the Archipelago. You probably could play like the souvenir bird. I think he has a similar mutate cost, and you can actually get a hold of like non-creature permanents. So that one's pretty cool too. So yeah, I think you'd be kind of digging that one as well. But I mean, also alternatively, this would be nice to just like slam on the battlefield too, onto a Scoot Swarm, or like just to even get this on the battlefield through like an Illuna trigger, and now you have 7/7 that's like when you mutate on it, it does some very good things that like will stun creatures, and they won't untap until the controller's next untap step. So it's kind of cool stuff, a little bit of a stun action. All right, so I mean, other than that, like we're playing I think we got in just enough lands, like the 45 lands, and I think I spent the most time on kind of the mana base. I know I definitely wanted to have like at least 13 basics in this deck, and that's much better than our Omnath Locus of All, I believe, by 2. So it was much easier for us to like kind of get in like a nice responsible mana base with like still a really good amount of fetch lands, and we get to play some like really fun lands, like like a Hall of Storm Giants now, which is just a nice man land. I thought that was a cool choice. And then of course we still get like these really nice fetch lands. We get the shock lands here, the Steam Bend Stopping Ground, we get Breeding Pool, we get those nice ones, we get some Surveils. I mean, I don't think I want to run 3. I want to definitely continue to run like an abundance of basics, but we definitely need to have a lot of fetches. So that's why we're playing like the Cabaret Courier, at least one of those, because those are just nice. So the Blossoming Tortoise, they'll just immediately sack themselves, and the Lumra, and you might get additional landfall triggers because of this land, which is really nice. Because on those triggers, the lands enter tapped. So I guess we made it this far. So let's kind of like look at maybe like a little goldfish hand, and this one looks kind of fun. It has like a cobra in it and a provisioner, so it's kind of all we want. Nice little rampies to our stuff. So let's kind of get in here, and we'll just draw for our turn because we're playing EDH, and you can probably surveil for like maybe another land here for our thing, and you could also even hold up like an offer probably if you wanted as this as well. So we'd probably be able to like look at the top of our deck. It's a land, so I think we probably keep that. It's probably best for our Cobra as well. So probably just go into here. Now we're into Cobraville, and now we can draw for our next turn on Azusa. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. And I think you probably want to kind of get into Errata here, because if you can link that up with an Azusa, that would probably be our best chance, it looks like. So, and then you could probably still hold up mana here, right? So I assume we could do something like this, perhaps. This would be the one here for the, you can produce red, and we'd have probably a green or red source there, so we could still hold up blue. And then we'd have Rada here that can play from the top. So we can probably have a pretty decent turn with the Sousa if we get lucky. So that's a commercial district, so that kind of gives us some opportunities too. So we probably definitely lead with the Sousa here, depending on what we could also see on the top. I mean, that would kind of dictate probably what we do as well. You know, you could even like probably lead into an Illuna if you wanted, but this kind of offers you some lands. And look at that, there's a couple lands here, so we get to play 2 additional lands on our turn with the Sousa, so this is some nice kind of landfall action here. And we can keep looking, and I'm wondering if we would have just surveilled this away, and we could probably get another shot with the Sousa, because we had this commercial district here. And then we can go ahead and we find a Soul Ring that's pretty decent as well. I believe after all this kind of action here, we'd have at least, you know, 3 mana available, because this would be tapped. And you would have this first trigger here, and you had the landfall trigger, so you'd have 3 mana total. Wouldn't be enough to mutate, but we could probably go into like a solemn and keep your landfall action going even more. We could actually shuffle too, and we might even have a chance, because you could basically have 4 mana here with that, and then you can lead into the solemn. Oops. And then we get another land. It's beautiful. Is there anything else? I mean, that's just like another 3 mana. You could probably lead right into Provisioner, or you could just keep your offer open if we haven't used it already. So, yeah, that's the hot thing about Sousa and like these cards that let you play from the top and the Surveil lands. That is the major pull, because without these lands, you know, how are you going to dictate the top of your library? And these lands that let you kind of look at the top, they come in tapped, which is a downside. But they are going to let you put in a card into your graveyard. So, all right, let's try to do one more here, one more goldfish for you guys. I mean, obviously that kind of hand, this kind of looks pretty whacked out. I mean, it's just fast. It's like super fast, you know. So, I mean, how would you even like want to go about that? I suppose you can just go Forest, Hall, Soul Ring, or you could go. Yeah, that's probably the best bet. Forest, Hall, Soul Ring, and then you can kind of keep your land gas going, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, it's just a fast one in general, you know. Let's deal another one. You know, it's always interesting, like, to have Vazuza, and there's not really much action here at the bottom end. It's a little too slow. I mean, this card's just completely busted, isn't it? Frontline Heroism. I might be tempted to keep that, especially with, like, a low-cost mutate card here as well. I mean, Beast Within is kind of nice too, because you can kind of loop those back with the Lord Dracus. All right, let's play test this one. Let's just see where it leads us. Gets us another mutate, and I suppose we just lead with like Hall and draw again. Still no plays. We're really leaning on that heroism to kind of make everything real good for us. All right, so that, for instance, we have a token on the battlefield now. We have some really nice cheap mutates, which is really interesting, actually. Now, what's really interesting about the Parcel Beast is that... Probably doing the Fable here. Fable Passage. What's really interesting about the Parcel Beast is that it will draw cards for us, which is nice. And... It can offer us a little bit of ramp in this position too. So for instance, we mutate over the token. We still have 1 mana available. We activate it by paying 1 and tapping. Either if it's a land, you put it right on the battlefield. If not, you put it into your hand. So this would just go right to our hand, this Nissa. And then we'd have 2 Parcel Beasts, which is really interesting. I think that one has haste too. That's really interesting. So that token has haste. So the mutated version can actually do this again. And then we just draw a Tyler's Provisioner. So then we go to our next turn, so we'd have 2 Parcel Beasts on the battlefield. And, I suppose you could, maybe get a Nissa down and start trying to, go ham with this, kind of these Parcel Beasts, which is, kind of nuts. You're probably going to hit, right? You could either be very safe and just put the Provisioner on, too. It's kind of, up to you. Because we're not really in Luna range yet. We need a little bit more mana for that. We need 6 total. So yeah, I like, we have lots of cards. They both seem very interesting, don't they? Let's imagine that we're just going to start, tapping these down to see what happens. And that's a Nature's Lore. And then we do so again. And we do get a land hit, so that's good. That'll give us a landfall trigger there. We've already invested 2 mana here with these. So basically 4 virtual mana at this point. And this kind of works too. The Nature's Lore kind of looks pretty nice, doesn't it? This would go ahead and fetch. So now we have 6 virtual mana, and you could actually mutate now. I'm sure of it. We can mutate over the Parcel Beast or even Nissa, and then the copy would go. Additional copy would be copied by the heroism. So this is a very strong card, and it was it basically was a very slow, but you can just see how strong this card is for us. It's just really good. And guys, that's Illuna Apex of Wishes. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Leave me a like or comment, share with your friends. Let them know that we're teaching people about mutate and investigating ourselves. And I will have this awesome deck tech for you guys probably done by next week. This was kind of a nice little entree into it, but I do have the deck ready here. There's the beautiful Illuna, and I'm very excited. I'm just glad because Omnath was a really cool thing to kind of investigate, but I am extremely happy just kind of with the simplicity of a 3-color commander here. It just kind of makes me feel nice. I don't know. It makes me feel like my brain a little bit less stressed out, I guess, kind of trying to figure out the mana base and such. So have a great day. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.